good morning. My name is Laree, and I work with a company called Agriculture for Life. And Agriculture for Life is based in Alberta, probably where all of us are today. And we have the fun job of working with teachers and students and families to teach everyone about agriculture and food and where all that amazing food that you eat all day long comes from. So this month is in March is a special month because students all across Canada are learning together about agriculture. It is called Canadian Agriculture Literacy Month. So we're super excited because today we are joined by Farmer Jen and Deborah, who are going to teach us all together about pulses. So by the end of this morning, we're going to know what is a pulse and we'll be excited for dinner. So Jen and Deborah, over to you.
Maple beans are pulses.
Awesome. Thank you, Laree, and welcome everybody. We're really excited to be here today. So as we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 6 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and the Métis people. I acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. We're very happy to be with you today. So as Laree mentioned, Jen and I are going to talk to you about pulses. So just a little bit about who we are. I'm going to do a little bit of talking, and then all the fun stuff, Jen's going to show you some really cool pictures and have some fun stuff to share with you. So I'm Deborah, and I'm a registered dietitian, and my job is I'm with the Alberta Pulse Growers, and we work with the farmers that grow pulses right here in Alberta, and I get to share information about nutrition, about shopping, about recipes, and all kinds of cooking tips when it comes to pulses. So that's kind of what I do. And then I'm going to turn it over here to Jen. Did you want to talk about yourself now, Jen, or do you want to wait till later when your cool pictures come up?
Oh, let's wait for the cool pictures.
Okay, so because we want to keep it moving along, so we have lots of time for questions if you guys have any questions that you want to share with us. So I'm just going to do a little bit here, give you some background, but does anybody know what pulses are? I know this is going to be hard to get questions, so I'm going to ask questions and probably answer them myself. So lots of times when I'm talking to people about pulses, they'll go, oh yeah, that's this little beat here, you know, my heartbeat. They touch the pulse in their neck, or they touch the pulse on their wrist. But what we're talking about here are pulses, which is a type of food. And these are beans and peas, lentils and chickpeas. And they're part of the legume family, which means these are little seeds that grow in a pod. And when they're dry enough, they get harvested, and then we get to eat them. So I'm showing you some pictures here of some peas. So you might see in the store, or if you're in your pantry, or you can look in your kitchen, or do a little treasure hunt in the grocery store. So here in Alberta, we grow green peas and yellow peas. And when you go to the grocery store, what you're going to see are these little things here, these yellow split peas and green split peas. And this is a picture of what you might see if you were driving along the countryside. You're going to see in the springtime, the pea plants starting to flower. And then the kind of things you make with peas, usually what you might have seen is split pea soup. So this is a split pea soup picture I've got for you. We also grow beans, and not green or yellow beans, you know, like you see. We grow pinto beans, great northern beans, and black beans. And so I've got some pictures there to show you. The pinto beans are these little speckly ones. A great northern bean is a nice white bean, and well, black beans, that kind of tells you what it is. They're these black beans. And my picture here shows what the crop of beans looks like in the field. So there'd be rows and rows and acres of them. And something that you might have seen beans in would be refried beans, if you've had any kind of Mexican tacos. And so that's my picture there, is refried beans are made from pinto beans. The other pulse crops that we grow are lentils. And so red lentils and green lentils. And in the grocery store or in your pantry or whatever you're using in your recipes, you'll see them as a red split lentil where they take the coating off and the inside is this lovely orange color. And a green lentil, it's a funny kind of green, but it's kind of this light green color. And the picture I've got here shows you, this is what the pods of a lentil plant look like. There's a couple of little itty bitty lentils in there. And oftentimes you'll see lentils in things like curries or dals. It's very common to see them there. And last but not least, we do grow some chickpeas. And the chickpea that we grow is called a kabuli chickpea. So it's those chickpeas that you would see in something like a hummus. So this is a picture of hummus that you can make with chickpeas. And this is what a chickpea plant will look like. And if you see these little green little pockets here, that's what the pod looks like. And inside there may be 1 or 2 chickpeas that are growing in there. So that's what we grow. So just to show you what pulses are. So this is, hopefully it's not looking too complicated, but we grow a lot of pulses in Canada. And Canada grows probably the most peas and lentils in the world. And a lot of those peas and lentils that we grow, we ship to countries all around the world. Pulses are grown primarily in Alberta and Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. So it's not grown everywhere, just in the prairies and a little bit of Ontario. Now, if you're looking at Alberta, so this is my big Canadian map, and then I'm like, let's zoom into Alberta. I got lots of arrows here, but basically it's just to show you that all those pulses that I showed you before, they grow in different parts of the province based on the climate that's there, the kind of soil that's there, basically what's going to grow based on where that farm is located. Our peas grow in all parts of the province. They're very resilient and can grow just about anywhere. Lentils we grow in southern Alberta. So if you know where Calgary is, so think about where this line is here. So from Calgary down south to the United States border is where we grow all of our lentils. Our beans, if we've got anybody joining us from the Lethbridge, Bow Island, Medicine Hat area, all of our beans grow around there, around the Tabor area in southern Alberta. And our chickpeas we grow in around the Medicine Hat area. So we grow a little bit of everything all over the place. So that's sort of a little bit of a taste about what the pulses are. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen, and she's going to talk about her farm. And I'm going to be the one clicking through. So Jen, you just tell me when to click on your different videos and things, and I can do that for you.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. This is a real treat for me to be able to talk to you guys. And I'm actually a little bit sad that I can't be in front of the classroom, because lots of times we like to play some fun games and do some fun activities. But we're going to do our very best. So thank you for taking the time to listen and come and visit my farm this morning. So as Deborah said, I am a farmer, and I grew up on the farm, which is kind of special, and not a lot of people can say that anymore. And then the other thing I did is I married a guy who has a farm too, so that I still get to be a farmer even when I'm grown up. And we're going to click through and we're going to talk about some pictures, but I want to start us to think about farms a little bit differently this morning. So sometimes, you know, when you're driving down the road and you look out in the field, we all love to see the animals. But I want us to kind of start to think about some of the things and the reasons that farmers do what they do, and why they choose to do some things and not others. And just see how it fits into the bigger picture, because even if you've never been on a farm, the farm should be important to you, because we all eat and we all live in this world. And one of the things that farmers are maybe really closely connected to is the environment and the environment. So Deborah's got this great map of Alberta, and I live kind of smack in the middle, and in a place kind of called Wetaskiwin, which is about halfway between Edmonton and Red Deer, and I live on the east side of Highway 2, and I grew up on the west side of Highway 2, so I've even had the benefit of living in kind of 2 different areas. And Deborah's going to click on this little come to my farm and see link, and we're going to fly. Thank you, Google Earth. And you can come and actually get a little bit of a picture. It's an old picture on the farm where we live now. So maybe just while we're waiting for Google Earth to wake up and do its thing, in your classrooms, if you could just kind of take a look around the room and stick up your hand if you know somebody who lives on a farm or if you've ever visited a farm. Okay, so just take a look around and maybe we'll say, you know what, goodbye Google. And we'll just click onto the next farm, the next slide, Deb. So if you stuck your hand up, you are a precious commodity, because you know what, there's not a lot of people who have been on a farm or who live on farms. And so you have been, you're very special, and just know that. So here's some pictures. We have kind of a crazy farm, a little bit of a mixed up crazy farm. Not every farm is like this. So we're called a mixed farm because we have animals and we grow crops. So there's some farms that only have animals and there's some farms that only grow crops. But the area of Alberta that we live in has some really variable landscape. And so it's actually best for us, for our business, our farm business, if we have a little bit of both. And so you'll see a picture here of Rufus, our donkey. We actually call him the honky donkey wonky donkey. And he's just fun. He has a lot of attitude and sass. And he's not super friendly unless you have something he wants. So we have a single donkey and we have some horses too, but they're not near as fun. And then we have Bonnie the goat. And my kids, as start of their own little business, have started a little tiny goat herd. So we have 9 goats. And this little baby down in the bottom, that's Piper. She was Bonnie's baby last year. So we have a donkey just for fun. We have some goats because the boys are starting a little business, and that's easy and safe for them when they're young. And we also have chickens, and so those are baby chicks, and we'll be getting them probably in a month. We don't have a lot of chickens, but we have some that we use for eggs, and then we also have some that we grow for meat for us and our family. And then this time of year is one of my favorite times of year because Deb, you can go ahead and click on that video. We have cows, and that means that now we're getting baby calves. And so calves are a lot of work, and they're super cute and fun. And so part of what I'm doing every day now, and my kids and my husband, is once these babies are born, we have to check them. And so this little video is just me taking you on a walk through our cow pen. And every day we check and we make sure that the baby calves get up. And one of the really cool things, the ways that calves were created, is if we know they're feeling good, they stretch. They do a big stretch. Can you guys all do a big stretch if you're feeling good today? Okay, big stretch. And the other thing we do is we look at their butts. Because when we're talking about animals and we're talking about having healthy animals, we talk a lot about poop. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that in your classroom, but we're going to talk a little bit about it right now. So when I'm wandering out through the pens, I'm always looking at their little bums to make sure that they're clean. Because if they're clean, then I know that they're probably, poop is pretty normal. And you know, if it's the wrong color, if it's the wrong consistency, we know there's a problem, and then we bring the little baby calves into the barn. So this is one of my favorite time of year because I get to go out into the cow pen. Now, one of the beautiful things about having animals and growing crops, so this is a tiny little baby pea plant, and we always get so distracted, I think, by the animals, even me some days. But really, the foundation to all of these farms, animal farms, crop farms, is growing plants in the soil. And so even though we have all these animals and we get to play with babies, actually the most important part, and one of the reasons why we're successful, is because we grow plants. We grow plants to sell to you for food, and then there's other plants that we grow because we need them to feed the animals. And underlying all of that decision making is making sure that we keep healthy soil. Because if we mistreat our land and our soil, that means our crops don't grow as well, which means we can't take care of our animals and we can't sell food for people to eat. So, Deb, maybe that was a really long introduction. And I don't know whether you want me to go on through the times of the year. Okay, so let's launch into this. So spring is coming. It might not feel like it today. Our buses didn't run because of the yucky roads and all of the wind. So spring sometimes feels far away. But I wanted to walk you a little bit about through the year. And so these are pictures of our planter or our seed drill. And because everything is under snow right now, I didn't think it would be so fun to try and go and dig around outside. Plus it's a little bit cold and I'm a bit of a princess sometimes. So I got out our toys to see. And this is called a seed drill. And in this part of the drill, and so that gets towed behind the tractor. Sometimes it's at the very back of the train. There's different compartments. And in each of these different compartments, something different goes, okay? So one of them will have the seeds, and that's that little pink thing down in the corner. That is a pea seed. And we can talk about why it's pink if we want to later on. And then in the other compartments goes the fertilizer, which is plant food, okay? So just like our bodies need food to grow, plants need food to grow. And the way the plants take up food is through their roots. Just like the only way we can get fed is through our mouth, the only way that plants can take up the things they need to grow is in their roots. So we need to make sure that we put that in the soil when we plant the seeds. And so the fertilizer bits go in here. And then we have this great big huge thing, which is, you can see kind of that little shovel picture in your top right-hand corner of your screen. And those are our little tiny triangle knives, kind of like knives that open the soil. And then the hoses that you can see in the bottom center picture, the seed is blown with air down through those hoses. And then it comes and falls just below the little point on those two little knives. And that's how it drops in the soil. And then there's great big giant wheels behind that pack the soil down. So that's how we get things into the ground. And we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort making sure that we put only the right number of seeds and only the right amount of food and so many different things like that, just to make sure that when the seed goes in the ground, that we're trying to maximize and get our best. And we have to remember at the bottom of the day, farms are businesses. And so a lot of our decisions are about money. And so we want to make sure that we save money and also that we can farm again next year. So that's where environment and making sure that we keep everything healthy comes into play. Okay, Deb. So that's seeding. Now we're going to kind of go warp through speed through the middle of the year. A lot of things happen in the summertime. We are out walking our fields or flying drones over our fields probably every 2 weeks. And we're looking for a lot of different things. Just like when I walk through the baby calf pen and look at their bums, I actually walk through my fields and look at how healthy my plants are. Because if my plants aren't healthy, that means they won't produce seed. And if they don't produce seed, I don't really have anything to sell. So we do all sorts of things during the summer. We have some amazing technology. Did you know that second to the military is agriculture for its use of technology? So the military has some really cool stuff, but agriculture has cool things. So if you love computers or gaming, there's a spot for you in agriculture. Okay. All right. So Deb, let's go back to that harvest slide. And I want to talk a little bit about how we get the plants from the field into these bags that you can buy in the store. So here's my bag of beans. And the way we do it is called a combine. And I just broke it. Whoops. Okay. So Debbie can go ahead and click on that video. So at the end of the year, one of the unique things about the plants that we grow is we have to store them. Okay. So, you know, when you get peppers from the greenhouse, they're fresh and they're picked fresh, and we have to store them in a fridge because in a little while they're going to go bad. Right? Maybe a week, maybe a couple weeks, we can keep them in the fridge. But with the crops that we harvest, sometimes they need to get stored for a whole year. So there's not enough fridge space for that in the world, okay? Not enough fridge space. So what that means is we have to wait until those little tiny seeds get dry, because when they're dry, then they stay stable. And so we can say that we can keep them in these bags and packs on the shelf for a long, long time. So we have these cool machines called combines that are kind of like bodies. Okay, so if you think about when you eat food, you put the food in, your tummy digests stuff, your body takes what you need and you poop the rest out, right? What we don't need. Okay, combine, same thing. So if you look at this plant in the field, there you can see the pea pod right there. What we want is inside that pod. We don't need anything else. So enter the combine. So this is called the header. And you can see in the video that this spins and there's knives at the bottom along here that go back and forth. And so they cut the crop off above the soil. These reels move it in through the throat. So we call that the feeder house, but that's like the throat. And so it kind of chews it up, moves inside, and there's like these big circles that beat. It's kind of like your stomach moving around and all the digestion. And then there's two shoots essentially, and one takes the seeds that we want into this basket on the top that we call a hopper. And the rest, the stuff that we don't need, it spits out the back. So you can see all of that dust behind the combine when it's driving is actually the material that we don't want. But that material is very important because that is putting carbon, nutrients back into our ecosystems. Okay, so two really cool things when we harvest these crops, and peas are especially good. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. A, we get food for us. B, we get food back for the land. Okay, Deb, I could talk forever. You should cut me off.
Before, I've got one question, Jen, that's been posted in the chat just before we get too far on that. Jacob is asking, how long does it take to harvest all of that crop?
Oh, Jacob, that's a great question. And you know what the answer is? It depends, because weather is hugely important. So if we think about how fast that combine can drive, if you go out for a really good walk, my kids tease me all the time that say, Mom, we're fast walkers. But if you go for a walk with your arms pumping, that's how fast a combine moves. Okay, no running, walking. That's how fast a combine moves. So it can take days. So we plan basically a whole month. We're only a medium-sized farm. There's farms that are way bigger than us, and there's farms that are way smaller than us. So we're kind of a medium-sized farm. So it takes almost a month. It depends, of course, on how much land you've got. So that's a really great question. But next time you go for a walk, really walk, pump your arms, just think about that. That's how fast a combine moves.
I see somebody with their hand up, Rayleigh and Caleb. So Rayleigh, I don't know if we can unmute you. I'm thinking she must have a very important question to ask us.
Okay. So how long does the crops have to grow until they're fully
That's a great question. And you know that's a great question, Rayleigh. Thank you for answering that. And it kind of ties into Daniel's question too in the chat. So we plant our crops in the springtime. So in where I live, it's about the beginning of May. If you're in southern Alberta by Lethbridge or Calgary, sometimes the end of April. And the way we know what time is the right time is we take the temperature of the soil. Ooh, okay. Has anybody had their temperature taken? Me too. Okay. Sometimes they shoot it in your ear. Sometimes they put it in your mouth. Sometimes they put it other places. Okay. So we need to know, firstly, that the soil is going to be warm enough, because the soil is like going into a battle zone. When we put the seeds in the ground, there's cold and wet, and there's bugs there that don't want the plants to grow and all sorts of things. So we want to make sure that when we plant the seeds into the ground, that they're going to have the best chance of growing. So we take the soil's temperature, and when it's about 5 degrees, okay, that's kind of the magic number. For some crops like beans, like the dry beans, the black beans and the pinto beans that Deb showed us earlier, those beans like it a little warmer. So we have to wait till it's 10 degrees before we put them in the soil. So that usually happens in about May. And then they grow all summer. And we have a wide variety of crops that will mature. That's what we call it. We call it mature when we harvest them at different times. So for peas, which was the video that we saw, and this plant on the left of your screen, those plants need maybe 80 or 90 days to mature. So if we plant them in May, we harvest them or combine them in August, probably the end of August. For some other crops, faba beans, which are the middle, if you've ever had fluffle, that's a funny word. Can you guys say fluffle? It's a funny word. Anyway, those are really long. They need like 110 days. So we'll combine them in October, sometimes even in the snow. And then there's all sorts of plants in the middle. So the wheat that makes your bread and your muffins and your donuts, I particularly like donuts, then that's kind of somewhere in the middle. So we'll plant it in May, we'll combine it in September, October. So those are good questions. And you know what, some of the decisions that we make sure that when we choose our crops, that they're not all ready to combine at the same time, because we can't, so we try and make a decision, and some of our business planning is to spread all of that out. You guys are asking really great questions. I'm super impressed.
Jen, I'm just going to add in there that was one of Daniel's questions too, was do you have to harvest different crops at different times, which you just explained to us. So Daniel was thinking the same thing. So thanks for reviewing that for us.
Okay, so because I have to tell you guys something. I'm a bit of a science geek. Okay, so in addition to being a farmer, I'm actually a plant doctor, and I went to school for way too long, and I got a fancy hat and a lab coat. Okay, so it can't all be fun and games. And one of the fun things about being on the farm, and that my husband hates, is that sometimes I ask hard questions and I want to know behind the scenes and understand things. So one of the things that we choose when we grow, there is no farm that grows only one kind of crop, because you would not be successful. So on our farm, and I see that's the question that popped up, and that's really a great question, we grow pulses. So we grow peas and we grow faba beans, because that's where we're located. We grow wheat, and we grow different kinds of wheat. Actually, we grow wheat that makes pasta, and we grow wheat that makes bread, and we grow wheat that goes into biofuels. Okay, so ethanol production. We grow barley, and on our farm, we're not very good at growing barley for beer. And so we grow barley for cows and chickens and pigs. We also grow canola. So canola is a crop that can be used for many different things. One of the things that it's used for is canola oil that you buy in the store. The other thing is it's crushed and used in what's called biodiesel. So that's like green fuel. And then the product of after you crush it, the leftovers go in to feed animals. So mostly pigs and chickens. So we never only grow one kind of crop, because that's actually detrimental. It kind of shoots us in our own foot, because for the soil to be healthy and for us to have the most diversity, is what we would say, in the microorganisms and all the bacteria and stuff that grow in the soil, we need to grow a variety of things. Okay, so on our farm, we grow 4, sometimes 5 different crops. We also, because we have animals, we grow what's called a perennial crop. So grass or alfalfa that stays in the ground for many, many years. So we don't have to plant it every spring. Okay, now one of the reasons why we on our farm love to grow pulses, and so here's where we're gonna get a little sciencey, okay? I'm missing a balloon. Oh, I found it. Okay, so the air around us, look up, look around. What do you see? Nothing. But in the air, it's made up of all sorts of molecules. So we have What do we breathe? We need oxygen, right? Oxygen. Can you see this is my blue balloon is oxygen. And so people take this in, right? Okay. There's also carbon dioxide, okay? And that's what plants breathe. We're going to ignore that plants breathe this for a minute because that's another lesson for a different day, okay? But there is a lot of the air that's nitrogen, okay? Actually, the most of our air is nitrogen. So if you could see the color of the air you breathe, there'd be a lot of red. I'm just making that up. Okay, so the cool thing about plants, about pulse plants, only pulse plants, legumes, okay, is that nobody else can do this. So this nitrogen that's floating around in the air, pulse plants have this special relationship. They made a handshake deal with these little bugs called rhizobia. Rhizobia is a hard word. You can look up how to spell it later. And there's even some cool videos on YouTube that you'll be able to find. So rhizobia. Rhizobia live in the soil. Nitrogen lives in the air. But guess what? There's air in the soil too. Okay, so nitrogen, it's air, but it's in the soil. These bugs make a deal with pulse plants that if I can live in your roots, and if you'll feed me some of the carbohydrates that you make, that's what they make it from. The carbon dioxide that's in the air, okay? Then I'm gonna take this nitrogen that's floating around in the soil, and I'm gonna give it to you, okay? So you let me live in your roots, you feed me sugar, because I need sugar to live, I like sugar. And I'm gonna give you nitrogen that you can use. So do you know what that means for me as a farmer? A, that the system is feeding itself, kind of just like photosynthesis, but it means that I don't have to feed the plants. And so there's a number of things that allows us to do. A, making fertilizer can sometimes be not so good for the environment, okay? Because we have to manufacture it. Also, when we put it in our tanks and pull it through the field, it costs us diesel fuel, it costs us time, and it costs us money, okay? So by putting pulse plants into the group of plants that I grow, I'm reducing my reliance on fertilizer, on manufacturing of fertilizer. I'm saving myself fuel, which also means my emissions are way down. So what we say, if I was to go all sciencey on you, we would say that pulses are a very good plant to grow for the environment, that they have a very small environmental footprint, okay? All of the big companies like to measure things in the size of your feet, and pulses have very small feet in terms of their environmental footprint, okay? And I know some of you guys will be learning about carbon cycles and those kind of things, and we have all sorts of good news stories about that. There's your science lesson for the day.
So Jen, I wasn't sure. Pulses are really pretty. We talk about them being pretty. So, but anyway, thank you, Jen. That was an awesome science lesson. You probably weren't expecting to get that today. And you got to learn a little bit now about, I know we're getting close to the end of time, so I'm going to kind of wrap this up so then if there's any questions, we can answer them. But just wanted to show you, we grow some of the beans that we grow that I didn't talk about. These ones here are what we call small red. And you see how Jen was showing you how the plant dries and it goes from green to that yellow kind of tanny browny color. So you can see how this is dried. And these are what the beans look like in the pod. So the combine helps to split open that pod to get the beans out. And it will do that for the peas and for the lentils. And sometimes what we'll see is as the bean plant is growing, sometimes those pods look very different colors. So it's really kind of cool to see what they look like. So just a couple more slides here and then we'll wrap it up. But I remember I mentioned that Canada grows a lot of peas and lentils and that we're kind of #1 in the world. We actually, we don't eat as many pulses as we grow. So what ends up happening is we share those pulses with over 150 countries around the world. And this is just a little list to show you some of the countries that we ship our pulses to, especially different pulses. So I'm showing here, sometimes they're packed into these bags like you'll see down here, or they'll go into these great big bags. Like imagine a great big IKEA bag, but like way, way, way bigger, like almost as big as your car. And it'll be full of peas or full of beans or full of lentils. And it'll go into a container and it can be shipped by train across the country, or it'll go on ships across the ocean to different countries. So here what we tell people is if you want to look for and support your Canadian pulse farmers, you want to look for Product of Canada on those labels in the grocery store. And then last but not least, so Jen's kind of the science person and the geeky person, she said, and she likes to talk about soil and microorganisms. I like to talk about nutrition and the foods we put in our bodies that are good for us and help us to grow big and strong. So pulses are great for humans because they are loaded with protein, which helps us to build strong muscles. Lots of iron, which is good for nice healthy blood and helps us with carrying oxygen around through our bodies, and a great source of fiber. So Jen was talking about poop, and she was talking about checking the poop of her cows and checking that and talking about how combines poop out the things they don't need. Well, fiber kind of acts like that for us. We call it nature's broom. It sweeps out all of those things that we don't need anymore, and it helps us to have really good poops. So there you go. There's your nutrition lesson. Great for our hearts, great for our digestive system, good for our muscles. And we've got lots of really delicious recipes. So I'm just showing you here. Those are black bean brownies down here. Bet you didn't know you could do that. These are roasted chickpeas. You can eat them like a snack. These are lentil lettuce wraps. These are little lentils in here. And these are bean smoothies. Oh, so good. And last but not least, and we still have a little bit of time. This is for the teachers. So if you're looking for more information, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me, you can give me a call. We've got some really good resources. Our resources are all free of charge. We ship them directly to you. And our Pulse Cafe, so this is the elementary school that we're doing here. Our Pulse Cafe program is linked right into your curriculum. And there's a teaching notes book, there's a curriculum links page to show you where it fits in. And then the green book and the orange book, those are workbooks for your students. And then we also have what we call our classroom support program for the foods programs within the junior and senior high schools. And I believe this is the last of my slides. So I think I can stop sharing, right? There we go. Now, do we have any questions? I see Rayleigh is really, I don't know if we should be giving out prizes for questions, I think, hey?
Yeah, we've got a few. We'll come to Rayleigh. We'll take a couple from the chat and then we'll make sure that we answer Rayleigh's questions. So Spencer is wondering, this would be for Jen, how many acres does your farm have?
Hey, so Spencer, that's cool. You know some stuff, hey? You know that we measure farmland and we say acre, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's just an area, okay? So area, some math working in here. That's awesome, guys. We love bringing learning into everything that we do. So our farm is about 3,000 acres, okay, which is pretty typical for the area that I live in. And if we were to look at the size of all the farms, we're probably really middle. There's some farms that are many more acres, and those tend to be just grain farms. And then some farms like dairy farms or chicken farms or pig farms can be a little bit smaller. So we're right in the middle. We have 300 head of cows, and we have a commercial herd, which all that means is we just sell into the packing plants for meat. So we don't have a purebred herd which supplies other farmers with breeding stock. We're supplying the grocery store. So 300 head of cows, which is actually fairly hefty, especially when it's really cold and you have to feed them all. Yeah, so that's a great question. Thanks for asking.
That's great. And then Bella's wondering, what got you into farming? Why do you like it?
Oh, Bella, that's a great question. And I think part of it is I was always a little bit of a tomboy, and I'm not. I've said it many times. I have boys, and it's probably a really good thing that God gave me boys because I don't know how to do hair. Okay, you can probably tell, right? So I needed a job that I could live in ponytails, and I love being outside. I love the animals. And then I think as I went through school and university, I got a lot of opportunities because I love understanding. My dad kind of gets tired of me still. I'm kind of old. I'm like more than 40, but not 50 yet. So kind of in the middle. But you know how there's sometimes when you're really little and you ask why a lot? I never stopped asking why. And so it's still, I'm sure I still tire my dad out. And so that's where the science part of my brain started going. And so when I had opportunity to do a master's degree and then a PhD in agriculture, because that's where my heart was, I always wanted to be able to talk to my dad about what I was doing. And yeah, and then just, life worked out perfectly and I got to marry a farmer. So I get to put into practice what I know in my head. So pulses are a little bit different because, as Deb said, in the store, we buy them in the bag, right? So we can actually see the seeds that we're growing. And here's my yellow peas. My kids tease me because they show up in weird places like pizza dough. When we do wheat, when we have wheat or barley, we have to buy it processed. Okay, so even if we think about the pulses that I feed my chickens, they show up in eggs. Okay, so when you go to the store and you buy pulses, you're actually buying the whole seed, either in a can or in a bag. And Deb's going to tell you because you heard and you saw all the places in Alberta that we grow. So one of the questions that I ask Deb all the time is, how do I know where the pulses I'm buying come from? Deb can tell us because she's got all the answers. But so pulses are different that way. When I sell them to you, you're eating the whole thing. But some people are getting smart. And so if you go to the store, and this is maybe part of the treasure hunt that I think Deb was thinking about, we can find pulses in bread. We can find pulses in burgers, okay, in the meat section. We can find pulses in crackers, and we can find pulses in snack. So pulses have such an opportunity to be eaten as a whole food, or in blackberry brownies, which is the full can of brownies, or in a cracker. And Deb, how do I know where the pulses I'm eating come from?
If you want to know what the pulses are, where they're from, so this is what I have in my, let's see here. Oh, that's the problem when you do this. So if you see this little logo here, this says Product of Canada. And exactly. So if you look for that on your labels, then you know, and because Alberta grows a lot of peas, if you see yellow peas on the store shelf or green peas on the shelf or red lentils or green lentils, because we grow a lot of those too, we're kind of number 2 to Saskatchewan. If it says Product of Canada, those are probably from Alberta or Saskatchewan, which is super cool. So that's a great question. So I'm just looking, Laurie, do we have time for more questions or are we kind of getting close to?
We're just wrapping up. So a couple of questions I think we could answer real quick from Jacob is, do you make beef barley soup?
I do.
Me too.
There you go.
But I add some beans to mine.
Me too.
Okay. And have you ever made beer?
You know what? I haven't.
No, me neither.
Kombucha. I've made kombucha.
Yeah.
So there you go. That is fantastic. I learned a lot. I'm super excited now when I go to buy my my product at the grocery store. I'm going to think that Jen has grown that for us all. So that's pretty special when we can have a Alberta farmer talking to us about what she's growing, and now we can make our soups and whatever we want to make that Deb showed us. And we know that Jen's probably grown that. That's pretty special. So Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're very, very happy that you took the time to meet us, and we're going to send out a follow-up survey just to get your responses on how much you learned about pulses. And so we will look forward to your comments. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about canola. So if you've signed up, if you haven't, you can sign up on our website, agricultureforlife.ca, and we're going to talk about growing canola in Alberta. So thank you again. A big high five to Jen and Deborah for joining us, and a big high five to the rest of you, and enjoy your day.